It was supposed to be Prince Harry's big moment, a triumphant appearance on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart that will remind the world of his royal stature. Instead, it ended in brutal humiliation, in front of a live audience and millions watching across the world. Stewart dismantled Harry's self-importance in seconds, refusing to bend his demand be addressed as His Royal Highness. The crowd roared with laughter, the cameras rolled, and Harry, visibly rattled, suffered what may be remembered as one of the most damaging public embarrassments of his post-royal career. What unfolded that night was more than just late-night television banter. It was a cultural reckoning. For years, Harry and Meghan have demanded recognition not based on work, but on titles they voluntarily abandoned. Stewart's refusal to indulge Harry's obsession with status wasn't just a comedic jab. It was a moment that exposed cracks in Harry's carefully constructed global image. From the opening second of the show, Harry entered the stage with the arrogance of a man still clinging to privileges he claims to have left behind. But Jon Stewart, sharp and unapologetic, wasn't going to let him dictate the narrative. Instead, he set the stage for a brutal reality check, one that highlighted the gulf between how Harry sees himself and how the world now views him. The tension was evident before the first punchline. Prince Harry, dressed in a tailored suit, attempted to stride on stage with the confidence of a man accustomed to being bowed to. But the New York crowd had come for Jon Stewart, not a lecture from a self-exiled royal. The applause was lukewarm, polite, but restrained, a sharp contrast to the thunderous cheers that usually greet guests who've earned their place in the spotlight. As Harry sat down, his first request immediately set the wrong tone. With a stiff smile, he leaned toward Stewart and said, "I'd appreciate it if you addressed me properly, His Royal Highness." The air in the studio shifted. Stewart paused, raised an eyebrow, and let the silence hang. Then came the line that detonated the room. "Your Royal Highness? On this couch, the only royalty is comedy. And trust me, you don't want me to start kneeling. My back isn't what it used to be." The audience exploded with laughter. Stewart had cut through the formality with ease, turning Harry's demand into a punchline. Cameras captured the prince's face tightening, his forced grin faltering. He was no longer in control. This was supposed to be Harry's platform to promote himself as a global figure of influence. Instead, Stewart had set the tone. Harry was a guest, not a ruler. Once the initial exchange was over, Stewart pressed forward with his trademark blend of humor and razor-sharp truth. He asked Harry about his memoir, spare not with reverence but with skepticism. "You call yourself a spare, but you're out here demanding your Royal Highness. Doesn't sound very spare to me." The audience erupted again, and Harry's irritation became impossible to hide. What was meant to be a promotional tour turned into an interrogation of contradictions. Each jab landed, not just because of Stewart's wit, but because it echoed the frustrations many feel about Harry's public persona. Meanwhile, Meghan's presence loomed in the subtext. Stewart hinted at the dynamic duo of Montecito, questioning whether Harry was truly speaking for himself or simply reading from a script crafted by his wife and their PR team. The audience, quick to catch the undertone, howled with approval. The humiliation was relentless. Every attempt by Harry to steer the conversation toward his achievements, Invictus Games, charitable work, was undercut by Stewart's refusal to let him play the victim. When Harry tried to reference his service to the crown, Stewart shot back. "Service? My man, DoorDash drivers are providing more service these days, and they don't demand to be called Your Royal Highness." The crowd lost control. Harry sat frozen, his face a storm of rage and disbelief. The fallout from that night was immediate. Social media lit up within minutes of the broadcast. Clips of Stewart's refusal to call Harry His Royal Highness trended globally, spliced into memes, TikTok edits, and parodies. What became clear was not just that Harry had been mocked, but that his insistence on titles had become a joke in itself. The man who claimed to escape the suffocating grip of the monarchy now appeared desperate to cling to its remnants. Journalists were quick to pounce. Headlines the next morning framed the event not as a friendly late-night chat, but as a turning point in Harry's unraveling public persona. Major outlets pointed out the irony. Harry wants to be seen as modern and relatable, yet still clings to the antiquated hierarchies he once denounced. Critics noted that Stewart had simply voiced what much of the public already felt. Harry is not an underdog, not a victim, but a privileged man incapable of moving forward without demanding recognition. For many, Stuart's sharp refusal was a symbolic stripping away of the titles Harry insists on. Unlike the monarchy, where deference is compulsory, Stuart gave him none, and the world applauded. But what made the humiliation sting most was that it did not end when the cameras stopped rolling. Reports leaked that Harry stormed off set after the taping, lashing out at aides backstage. He accused Stewart of disrespect, and even threatened to cut ties with networks unwilling to respect his status. Instead of damage control, his reaction fanned the flames. Insiders revealed that Netflix, already under pressure from Harry and Meghan's declining viewership, panicked at the backlash. Executives reportedly questioned whether Harry's obsession with royal formality was undermining their brand of authenticity. The fallout from Jon Stewart's defiant stance against Prince Harry's so-called royal demands was not contained within the studio walls. The moment the clip aired, it exploded across social media platforms, sparking an avalanche of commentary that reinforced the narrative of Harry as a figure clinging to titles that no longer carried weight outside palace corridors. For millions watching, this was not just late-night entertainment. It was a public rebuke of entitlement. The very fact that Harry insisted Stewart address him as his Royal Highness was seen as proof of the prince's inability to reconcile his royal past with his self-chosen new life in America. It painted a picture of a man who, despite his claims of independence, remained shackled to the pomp and prestige of monarchy. Stuart's refusal to bend, his effortless comedic timing, and his subtle reminder that America does not recognize hereditary privilege resonated deeply with audiences who were already skeptical of Harry's self-importance. The clip was replayed endlessly, dissected by commentators, and shared by critics who relished in the irony of Harry being stripped of the very respect he tried to demand. For viewers, Stuart's refusal wasn't just comedy. It was justice served in real time. But the humiliation didn't stop at laughter. News outlets quickly jumped on the story, with some headlines bluntly declaring Harry's demand pathetic and tone-deaf. Tabloid columns and online opinion pieces tore into the symbolism of the moment. Here was a man who had abandoned royal duties, criticized the very institution that bestowed his titles, yet still sought recognition of those titles on a foreign stage. The contradiction was impossible to ignore. Even more damaging was the reaction from within Britain. Royal insiders, speaking under the veil of anonymity, reportedly viewed the incident as confirmation of Harry's growing desperation. According to one senior aide, the fact that he still clings to HRH in settings where it simply doesn't apply reveals more about his fragile ego than anything else. He left that life behind, but clearly he hasn't let it go. The sentiment struck a chord. Harry's quest to redefine himself on his own terms has long been marred by the tension between wanting freedom and demanding recognition. The Stewart incident exposed the hypocrisy at the heart of this struggle. In seeking acknowledgement as his Royal Highness on an American late-night show, Harry managed to embody everything his critics accuse him of: pettiness, entitlement, and an inability to adapt. Social media users were quick to amplify this narrative. Memes portraying Harry as a man begging for validation flooded platforms like Twitter and TikTok. One viral post featured the caption, "Prince of Netflix, not a Briton," mocking Harry's attempt to command respect while relying on media contracts to sustain his new life. The contrast between his grandiose demand and Stuart's dismissive refusal became emblematic of a wider cultural disconnect. Harry's insistence on a royal identity that no longer resonated with the world he now inhabits. But perhaps the sharpest criticism came from those who had once sympathized with Harry's struggles. Commentators who had praised his candor about mental health and the burden of monarchy now voiced disappointment in his behavior. For them, the Stewart incident symbolized a regression, a return to the very entitlement he once claimed to despise. In their view, Harry had crossed a line, exposing himself as less a rebel forging a new path and more a royal exile clinging to past privileges. What made the moment sting even more was Jon Stewart's delivery. He didn't respond with anger or confrontation. He responded with humor. His calm, witty rejection of Harry's request carried a weight that a direct rebuke never could. By turning Harry's demand into a punchline, Stewart stripped it of seriousness and left Harry standing exposed, not as a dignified royal, but as a man desperate for recognition he could no longer command. And the repercussions rippled beyond Harry himself. Meghan Markle, though not directly involved, found her name pulled into the controversy. Commentators speculated whether she had encouraged Harry's demand for recognition, framing it as part of a broader pattern, where the couple sought validation at every turn. Whether fair or not, the incident reignited criticism of the Sussexes' brand, with many accusing them of exploiting royal titles while simultaneously attacking the monarchy. This duality, the desire to reject yet retain the benefits of monarchy, was laid bare for the world to see, and in the arena of public opinion, there was little forgiveness. Meanwhile, in Britain, palace aides reportedly expressed grim satisfaction at Harry's public embarrassment. To them, Stuart's rebuke was a vindication of what they had long believed, that Harry's insistence on using royal titles outside the context of service was a mistake that would only lead to ridicule. Sources close to royal circles suggested that Charles and William were unlikely to intervene or defend Harry publicly, leaving him to weather the storm of humiliation on his own.